Okay, so in continuing the discussion about fiscal policy, what I've drawn here is a recessionary gap. So what you would want here is expansionary fiscal policy, either more government spending or lower taxes. And what you would then try to do is either spend enough or tax less, enough just to shift out the AD curve. Now, how would you know how much to shift it out by? Well, you would get this by what's known as the government spending multiplier. And the government spending multiplier, in this case, would be, this would be if you were doing expansionary policy with more government spending, would be the change in government spending times 1 over 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume. Right, so if we made this, the marginal propensity to consume, let's say we made it 0.8. And let's say that the federal government spent $100,000 more. Right, then that would shift the economy by 500,000, right, because this would be 1 over 0.2, which would be 5. 5 times 100,000, you would see, right, a $500,000 change in the real GDP by taking 1 over 1 minus MPC times the amount of government spending. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that nicely because fiscal policy actually has a lot of problems associated with it. The problems come about from two fashions. First, there's a lot of crowding out. Let's say that the government spends more money on public transportation. Well, that's great, and it is going to stimulate the economy, but if there was a bus leaving my apartment in Eau Claire and it went, let's say, 3 times an hour to right to campus, well, rather than like driving to campus and walking from the really far parking lot I'm at, I might just take the bus instead. So I'm going to reduce my consumption of private vehicle transportation and just consume public transportation, right? Or if the government spends more money on better roads, right, then I might fly less, right? Or if the government spends more money on books for libraries, I'll buy fewer books, right? And what that's going to mean is that the aggregate demand curve won't shift as much, meaning I'll still be in a recessionary gap. So there's going to be some extent to which there's crowding out. There's another form that the crowding out takes, and that would be if the government is financing its spending with deficits, then as it issues more debt, that raises the interest rate because there's less funds that can be lent out to others. And as the interest rate goes up, that's going to crowd out private people borrowing money, right? So I pay more for a car loan because the government's already using a lot of the money out there that can be lent out. Now, that's certainly a concern among economists, these various degrees of crowding out. But much more concerning is the various lags that exist in fiscal policy. And basically there are 5 lags. There's a data lag, there's a wait-and-see lag, a legislative lag, a transmission lag, and an effectiveness lag. The data lag basically says that if there is a problem in the economy, we generally want to see, to see that problem exist, we need to see the data. And the data doesn't come out right away, right? It generally takes a few months or quarters to get that information. So first there's a data lag. Then, once you actually see a problem, you generally want to see several time periods of that problem recurring. So then that's the wait and see lag. And then, once you see that there's a problem, then there's a legislative lag. You have to pass a law to get the change of how to fix the problem. Okay? Then, once you've passed a law, let's say, then you have a transmission lag. That means it takes time for the law to go into effect. And then finally, you've got an effectiveness lag, right, is that once then the government spends the money, sets up the office, and starts distributing the money, it then takes time for people to then spend that money and for it to affect the economy. All of those legs add 2 to 3 years of time, whereas monetary policy acts much more quickly. And the problem then with those legs is that just as the economy is already fixing itself, right, just as the economy is starting to fix itself, let's say the SRAS curve is already shifting out, then all of a sudden the aggregate demand curve gets shifted. And you could go from point 1 to point 2, from a recessionary gap all the way directly to an inflationary gap, because the federal government got involved. So fiscal policy is incredibly messy and is generally considered by economists a really poor way to fix the economy. I would strongly encourage you, just if you find this of interest, go into Google News or just any of your favorite news sites. An interesting thing just got released, and it talks about actually how the Federal Reserve thought in 2006 about what would happen with the housing crisis and what they thought they were going to have to do with monetary policy. It's a very interesting read. And if you're interested in it, send me a quick email and I can send you a few articles as well. Okay, so that finishes the discussion of fiscal policy.